Hello all my merry makers, and my name is Becca, and welcome to another Merry Making Monday. Merry Making Mondays are my make-along / tutorials that I do, usually knitting or crocheting, and today we are continuing the sock hop. So let's go to the hop. That's all I can sing of that one. But seriously, let's go. So just as a reminder, the yarn that we're using for this is, or the yarn that I'm using for this, you can use any yarn for socks, but the whole purpose of this series is to teach you the basics. Is Red Heart, Super Saver, Stripes, and Retro Stripe. These are size 7 double point needles. And one thing I wanted to reiterate / talk about was gauge. Because I did my math wrong in the last video. And in case you didn't see my correction, I wanted to make sure that you saw. So here is a very old Susan Hayes gauge thing. So I line up my swatch. This is a finished sock, by the way. And I count how many stitches are in, or try to get this all lined up. And I count how many stitches there are. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Huh. It's a little bit different today. Maybe because this is a finished sock. So we've got, I'm going to use the same number as before, so not as confuse anybody. But when I did my swatch before, what we got was 7 stitches per 2 inches. And then the circumference of my daughter's foot was 6 inches. So I take this number 7, and I didn't realize and I multiply, and since this is 6 inches, 6 divided by 2 is 3. If I wanted it to get exact, it would be 3 times 7 equals 21. Now, like I said in my previous video, I like to cast on multiples of 4 in order to get what I call my magic number. And I'll talk more about that magic number today. But so the number that I'm going to cast on is 24. So today we are going to cast on with something called the long tail cast on, which is an elastic cast on. And then I am going to talk about ribbing and cuff length. So let's look at this finished sock that I made. So I obviously made this sock with a sizable cuff. I am a crew sock type of person. I know that some people are not. So whatever your preference, you can make that sock. Then that's the bonus of making your own socks. So we're gonna do a long tail cast on. Now let's talk about my magic number. So I'm gonna bring back my piece of paper, sorry. So my magic number is used multiple times when I make a sock. Now you may not ever use this number, so do you. But my magic number, and I'm just going to say MN, is whatever number it is that I cast on. So in this example, it's 24 divided by 4. And that is going to equal 6. So, I mentioned that if I was using multiple DPNs, you would want to separate them evenly amongst 4 needles so that you can have 4 resting needles and 1 working needle. I also use this number to determine how long my cuff is, how long my heel flap is, and how many stitches I need to go down to for my heel turn and my toe. So this shows up quite a bit when I make a sock. Alright. So when I do a long, there are a couple ways to determine how much yarn you need for a long tail cast on. When it's a small number, like 24, what I like to do is I take 2 of my needles and I just wrap it. So that's 1 wrap, 2 wrap, 3 wrap, 4 wrap, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then half of 24 is 12. So 11, 12, and then I do 1 more. I call that my 1 more to grow on, just in case my gauge is a little bit off or anything else. Then I fold it in half, and about there is where I want to start. So when you do a long tail cast on, go over your index finger, over your thumb. And you've got some, and you hold it tension. Then you take your needle and you go down, up through the thumb, grab it, grab the one that's around the index finger, pull it back through the thumb. Alright, I'm going to show you that again. So twist, up through the thumb, grab by the index finger, pull back up through the thumb. And like I said, this cast on, I like to use this cast on for cuff down socks because number one, once you get the hang of it, it's pretty quick. And number two, it's pretty elastic, which you want in your cuff. And if at any time you drop your yarn, put the shorter end over your thumb, the longer end over your index finger, bring it down, up through the thumb, grab the index finger. Alright, how many we got here? 3, 6, 7. Alright, and we're casting on 24, so I need 12. I like to, if I can, I like to separate my stitches evenly amongst 2 needles. So let's see, what did I say, 7? So I'm going to go a little bit faster now. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. See how quickly that went? Now, because I've done the cast on. Now, here's my second needle, and this is the part that trips some people up, is you've got 2 needles, but you do it like this needle ain't even there. You go up through the thumb, grab the yarn by the index finger. There you go. Up through the thumb, grab the yarn by the index finger, pull up. And I'm trying to, and if you see, I've got the yarn that's coming from my thumb secured by my middle finger there, and then the yarn from my index finger comes back down and around, and I've got it with my pinky. So that's where I'm keeping my tension. But if you, for some reason, can't keep tension that way, no big deal. Just tighten it up after you get it on. Pray that your yarn doesn't split on you. Good grief. All right, where are we at? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. So now we've got 24 cast on, and I forgot a stitch marker. I will be right back. All right. So before you join, you've got these two edges. Make sure they're lined up and your yarn isn't twisted on yourself. Now you can see that we've got kind of a longer tail. That's okay. Let's as long as it's not too long, we'll be fine. So this is the point where you need to decide whether you do what's called 1 by 1 ribbing or 2 by 2 ribbing. There are other types of ribbing. I'm not going to get into those right now because this is a series for a beginner. So this means we knit 1 and then we purl 1. This means we knit 2 and then we purl 2. So this makes for a little bit tighter cuff, as in it comes back a little bit tighter, but it's also more stretchy. I did a knit 2, purl 2 because this is a house sock. So just in case you don't know how to knit and you don't know or you don't know how to switch from knit to purl, we're going to go through the first part very slowly. So I go through, grab the yarn. Oh, and by the way, I forgot to say, I am a continental knitter. If you are an English knitter, what you do is going to look a little bit differently. If you're a left-hander, what you do is going to look a little bit differently. So, all right, so one thing I do is after I knit the first 2 stitches of the new needle, I pull a little bit on the bottom and then cinch up the yarn. And that prevents a phenomenon known as laddering in my sock. All right. Then I bring the yarn to the front, wrap it around, bring it back. And that is purling. Okay? So I've knit 2 and I've purled 2. So now I go back to knit 2 and purl 2. The other benefit of this particular number is when I've divided it up between 2 stitches like this, is I have a number that is divisible by 4 still. 12 is divisible by 4. So I know that I'm going to end this particular rib with a purl 2, which means when I go to my new needle, I will be knitting. And I find it's easier to start, especially double points like this, with a knit over a purl. I mean, you can do it, but from a personal standpoint, I prefer to start with a knit if I can. All right. So now we're on the second needle. And like I said, we start with a knit, we knit 2, and then we purl 2. Now, depending on if you're following a pattern and personal preferences, here is where things start to get different for everybody. So some patterns will tell you to do your ribbing for a set amount of rows. Some patterns will tell you to do your ribbing for a set amount of inches. Since we're not following a pattern, we're just doing the basics. For me, again, since I like a long cuff, I like something to grab onto, I would heavily suggest that when you have a cuff, that it's at least as long as your thumb. And that's even if you're doing no-show socks. Because you need something to hold on to when, you know, you're pulling this sock up your foot. So, that was row 1. And I am going to do that 5 more times. And this marker here is just to tell me I'm about to start a new row. It also signifies the front of the sock. Again, some patterns will tell you later on in the pattern, they'll say, like, after the cuff, they'll say, okay, now on the front of the sock, do this. And then on the back of the sock, you do this. So having this marker here really helps. I hope I'm making sense. I don't know if you want to... we're going to do one more. And then I'm going to show you a different sock that I'm making off camera so that you can see the difference between these two socks and the similarities, to be honest. And I'm just, now that I've established the pattern, I'm just what they call knitting the knits and purling the pearls. So when I see a knit, I knit. When I see a purl, I purl. Alright. So, like I said, I recommend doing that for at least your thumb. Or if you don't feel comfortable measuring, you feel more comfortable counting, that's where that magic number comes into play again. I like to do my ribbing for at least the same amount as my magic number, which for this sock is 6. Now, let me show you this other sock that I've been working on off camera, following these same rules. Now, this particular yarn, I don't know where it came from, but don't you just love that shimmer? This is probably at least 20% nylon, I would guess, just by the stretch. So when I did the gauge on this sock was, I'm going to get rid of this piece of paper, or the gauge on this sock, I should say, when knitted in the round, was 7 stitches per an inch. Not a 2 inches per a 1 inch. And now these socks are for me, and the circumference of my foot is 8 inches, almost exactly. So, this made my math really easy. I cast on 56 stitches. And then my magic number was 14. So and I still did 2x2 ribbing so that you could see that how that looked in this small yarn. But I did 14 rows of 2x2 ribbing, and it's still about the length of my thumb. So that's why I like my magic number. I don't know if I picked that up somewhere or somebody else introduced it to me, but I'm passing along that information to you. So I forgot to talk about, if you don't like short socks, how long to make your not your cuff, the leg of your sock. That's what it's referred to, the leg part of your sock. So this goes back to personal preferences. But again, I am a crew sock person. By the way, working on my sock as I talk. So I have found that, especially if I'm not working from a pattern, I'm just making socks, my leg is going to, as far as many rows, is going to equal the amount that I cast on. So for example, this sock, if you went through and counted all the V's until you reached where I did the heel flap, you would see that, you know, I cast on 24 and I did 24 rows, including the cuff. So, let's see, we did, the magic number for this was 6. So, I know some of you don't like math, but 24 minus 6 is 18. So, after the cuff, the leg part was just 18 rows of stockinette stitch. Now, for this one, I am not counting. So what I'm going to do is I know that my foot length is approximately about 8.5 inches. I'm going to have to remeasure, but it's about 8.5 inches. So I'm just going to do stockinette stitch for about 8 inches and then work on my heel flap. So I'm going to edit this in somewhere, I'm sure. All right, later, Maker Makers. So once you get done with the ribbing, then you can move on to the cuff. Now, if you're making short socks, like, you know, no-show socks, or I think they're called rollers, I think. Sorry, I don't like those types of socks, so I don't make them. Anyway, your cuff is not going to be very long, but once you finish your cuff, you can join us next week as I walk you through the heel flap and gusset. I hope you guys enjoyed the Mother's Day video. I hope you, if you have not seen that, please check that out. And then on Wednesday, I will show you what I've been working on. Until then, my merry makers, make what makes you merry. Ciao.